Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, this has been a week filled with really consequential events. The impeachment of a president, a trial going on in the United States Senate. In Israel, Bibi Netanyahu has given up his pursuit of immunity from criminal prosecution, and the Trump administration has rolled out what it calls a vision for peace to the Israelis, Palestinians, Gulf states, Jordan, Egypt. Most of the initial responses to this vision could have been predicted even before the details were placed on fancy paper. The Adelsons were ecstatic. J Street, much less so. As for me, my personal reservations are profound, really profound, but at the very least, or maybe this is all we can get out of it, the format of dozens of years of overwhelming, fruitless negotiations has been pushed aside and replaced. So these days can best be described as enigmas enshrouded in mysteries, cloaked in uncertainty, and obscured by the fog of human frailty. No one can know for sure the directions our country will be taking on so many fronts, but it matters. It really matters. Whether in a few days or at most another week or so, the Senate trial will have concluded. On March 2nd, Israel goes to the polls for the third time this year in an effort to choose a stable government. Some of the fog will lift, but today, on this very day, we remain clueless as to what will be revealed when that fog lifts. But we are not totally helpless. Now, this is a little bit of shameless self-promotion. Voting for the forthcoming World Zionist Congress is already underway. I urge you as strongly as I possibly can, please vote. It will take just 5 minutes on your phone. Now, it happens that I am on the Reform Movement's ARZA, A-R-Z-A, slate. And I'm anxious for your support, please. But whichever slate you prefer, please vote now, today, tomorrow. Vote, participate, make your voice count. We turn now to our Sedra, Bo, Exodus chapter 10, verse 1 and following. Here, in words that have become so familiar to us through the Haggadah, we see how political power can brazenly ignore the needs of the people, and how only radical change can break a very toxic chain of events. Isn't it actually comforting to pretend that things were so very different long ago in the days of Pharaoh? Things were different there. Somehow, today and 2,500 years ago don't appear to be so very different. Moses and Aaron are in Egypt at the insistence of God. 6 plagues have come and gone. Pharaoh has lost control over his own volition. God is now hardening Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh's stubborn refusal over and over again to respond to God's demands have created a path from which the God King can no longer turn away. Disaster is inexorably approaching. With words wrapped in the darkest foreboding, the text inserts a passage outlining the basic laws of Passover before they leave Egypt. This is the Passover sacrifice to the Eternal, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when smiting the Egyptians, but saved our lives. The firstborn of Egypt perish as God demonstrates the mighty hand of divine power. Every element of the Passover experience is connected within the Torah to the need to address the kids. Tell your children. When your children ask. The myriad of Haggadot all contain tricks and games and mnemonics and even a requirement for snacks to keep the kids alert for at least most of the Seder. 4 questions. Search for the Afikoman, the opening of the door for Elijah, the sights and sounds and smells and tastes associated with all of the prescribed rituals. The kids are absolutely the most important people seated around the Seder table. even when they inadvertently spill their grape juice on grandma's tablecloth. Check out the relevant Talmudic passages. The message is everywhere clear. Make certain that the kids get what's going on. And what's going on is all about freedom. Freedom is an absolute requirement before people can commit themselves to ever loftier goals. The Israelites would not have been able to accept Torah while they still were slaves in Egypt. Indeed, the Midrash tells us that the journey from Mount Sinai to Mount Sinai from Egypt was intentionally slow so that the people might regain their strength, their psychic strength, their physical strength, so that they could be in full health and freely accept Torah before the quaking mountain of Sinai. Without a sense of the empowerment of freedom, the Israelites could not have responded, "Na'aseh v'nishma." We will do, and we will forever study the depths of Torah. Another Midrash tells us that the people actually threw off their involuntary servitude to Pharaoh so that they could go to Sinai and become avadim ladonai, servants of God, freely. Torah can only be embraced freely. I remember a favorite old midrash, a favorite of mine anyway. It's actually a play on words. We're told later on in the book of Exodus that the words of God were charut, chet resh vav taf, charut, carved onto the tablets of stone. But the rabbis suggest, don't read charut, even that's what it looks like. Read cherut, same letters. Freedom. Torah is a gift freely given to our people through all of the mitzvot, through Mount Sinai. And the only way that we can truly embrace Torah is through choices that we make. Charut, yeah. Cherut, better. That is why Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks so strongly emphasizes the need to educate our children when discussing the Exodus. He focuses those thoughts on the Sedra. Universal education is one of the absolutely earliest of all Jewish values. Do you know that elementary schools were mandatory in the Jewish world already by the 1st century CE? Next part's hard. And even earlier than that, during the days of the Second Temple, boys and men were required, I know that's not enough, were required to have an education. Programs of education were vitally important. Vishinantam levanecha, teach your children. Where do we find that? Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta, it's right in the V'ahavta. Teach your kids. The rabbis anachronistically praised Abraham for having given a solid Jewish education to his children. They even had Isaac going off to study in a yeshiva, presumably in Brooklyn, maybe in Queens. The book of Proverbs makes very clear the connection between a strong, meaningful life and the lifelong pursuit of education. My friends, freedom is rich with complexities. The demands of freedom, the threats of freedom, the challenges of freedom can only become clear to those who study. Ask, what is a meaningful life? Is that just an empty abstraction, a mystical goal? Can we inherit a meaningful life? Plato taught that an unexamined life is not worth living. That's a bit extreme, perhaps. But I will tell you that Jewish tradition comes very close to embracing that perspective. Joyous study, learning from worthy role models, finding a place for each of us in a rich and storied culture, discovering authenticity in our community, empowering ourselves as individuals, seeing the world as a place deserving of our loving attention. That's why we tell our children. Through songs and prayers, stories, symbols, through questions that yield even more questions, the past becomes alive. And the dreams of others become our dreams as well. The more that our children grasp the experiences of our past and our present, the more that they are exposed to the mighty river of Jewish values and ethical norms, the more that they see themselves as heirs to a vibrant, living, transformative tradition, the more that they will feel the demands and opportunities derivative of the Exodus concerning which we are reading right now. Okay, that's it for now. Shabbat is a great time to consider how we are educating our own children and grandchildren, our nephews and nieces, and folks, even ourselves. But please don't forget to vote now in the World Zionist Congress elections, and perhaps you will want to cast an educated vote for the Artsa slate. Shabbat Shalom, and